So good evening, everyone. This is Prithvi, and I'm strategically contributing to learning and development at Join Group and your host for this evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar. But before we dive into insightful discussion on talent acquisition strategies for global success, let me introduce you to something very special, the GCC Workplace Awards. Our Workplace Awards initiative is more than just recognition. It's a platform that fosters learning, networking, and growth opportunities. Powered by Zone Group, we are gearing up for a grand event on August 2nd, 2024. Today marks the beginning of a pre-event webinar series aimed at facilitating networking opportunities and sharing valuable insight, starting with a very crucial topic of talent acquisition. Amidst this growth of GCC, it's essential that we recognize the efforts and the contribution of these GCCs. By acknowledging their efforts, we are not only celebrating their success, but also inspiring others to strive for excellence. We are proud to announce that we are the first to host India's GCC Workplace Awards, which aims to spotlight the exceptional work of these organizations and individuals. Now you might be wondering, why should my organization nominate? Well, here are some compelling reasons. Firstly, you will receive distinguished recognition among your peers, but it doesn't just stop there. You will also enhance your brand visibility, peer learning, and gain access to valuable networking opportunities. Also, you will receive insightful analysis and expert advice to further improve your workplace culture. Our selection process begins with the organizations nominating themselves for the awards. Following the nomination, they are required to complete both the employer and the employee survey. These surveys provide comprehensive insights into workplace culture and employee satisfaction. Submissions undergo a thorough evaluation by our expert panel, considering factors like learning and development, employee engagement, rewards and recognition, innovation, and many more. Finally, we announce the deserving winners, recognizing their exemplary efforts in showcasing exceptional workplace environments. Let's peek into what the event has in store for us. From free events, webinars covering topics like talent acquisition strategies to the grand event itself, scheduled on August 2nd, 2024, with over 400 expected participants with an exclusive gathering featuring keynote session, panel discussion, fireside chats, and winner announcement. It's a invite only, providing a platform for learning and networking. Attendees will enjoy networking opportunities during lunch and dinner. Plus, the event will receive media coverage amplifying recognition for our winners. And be assured of the post-event perks. You will gain access to valuable insight about the best practices at GCC workplaces. Here's a quick overview of our progress so far. We have received 140 nominations, out of which we have shortlisted 83 organizations. Notably, we have 26 GCCs with over 1,000 to 5,000 employee strength participating. Quite impressive, wouldn't you say? Now, if your organization is a GCC and you have not nominated your organization yet, click on the website that is being sent in the chat box. Please note that the contact details are also displayed on the screen. You can also scan the QR code for contact details. Also, you can feel free to reach out to us for further queries. We shall keep the screen open for a few seconds for you to scan the QR code. Thank you. We shall now move ahead with today's webinar. But before we move ahead with today's webinar, here are a few guidelines that you need to keep in your mind. The content discussed and presented belongs solely to the GCC workplace conversation. To ensure quality, both mic and camera have been disabled. The chat will be open following the end of the discussion for question and answer. Participants accessing the session through LinkedIn are encouraged to post their inquiries in the comment section, while those connecting via Zoom are invited to utilize the dedicated Q&A section for questions. For technical support, please note down the contact details displayed on the screen. Thank you. Now, the most exciting part is to meet our esteemed speakers who will be sharing their wonderful thoughts and views today. First up, we have Jay Kishan from Levi's with extensive experience in managing and building recruitment teams. Jay Kishan brings a unique blend of passion for recruiting and technology to the table. Currently leading the talent acquisition for Levi's India, his expertise spans across various industries, including renowned firms like Infosys and Ather Energy. A very warm welcome to you, Jay Kishan.
Thank you for the introduction.
Next, we have Gokul from Amazon, a seasoned talent acquisition leader with over 23 years of experience building and scaling talent programs and platforms. His expertise in harmonizing global talent and executing effective talent strategies has been instrumental in the success of various organizations. A very delightful welcome to you, Gokul.
Thank you, Prithvi. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
Thank you. We also have Arun Prasad from Flutter with over 2 decades of experience as a data-driven HR and talent acquisition leader. Arun brings a wealth of expertise in setting up, expanding, and transforming talent acquisition functions across diverse sectors and regions. A heartfelt welcome to you, Arun Prasad.
Thank you so much. I feel like 2 decades is feeling me a little older. I'm not, but thank you so much for all those 125 participants in this, webinar. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much. Last but not the least, we are very much honored to have Anuj Agarwal moderating us today. Anuj is a highly accomplished recruitment entrepreneur and a business leader with over 20 years of experience providing innovative and customized hiring solutions across a wide range of domains and industries. He is the founder and the CEO of Zoin Group and has partnered with over 1,000 companies. He is also an angel investor in few startups. A sincere welcome to you, Anuj. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over the reins to Anuj, who will be moderating today's discussion. Remember, to all the attendees, we will have a dedicated Q&A session in the last 15 minutes. So feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box. We're also streaming live on LinkedIn on Zoin's group page. We can also drop your questions in the comment box. Over to you, Anuj.
Hey, thanks so much, Prithvi, and welcome to my fellow panelists and welcome to everyone. I think we have 130 participants in Zoom and more than 500 participants in LinkedIn Live right now. So glad to see all of them live and joining us. I hope to have very wonderful session along with my knowledgeable panelists. My idea or my focus today is obviously we are doing a GCC Workplace Award and we would want to focus on talent acquisition and typically around the Global Capability Center, which is something which is very inspiring and which is something which is fast growing today in the country. For all of you who know, there are around 1,700 GCCs today in the country and they contribute to almost $50 billion as revenue every year. So that's quite a significant contribution which we get from all the GCCs today. And the way it is going, I think GCC sector is going to grow furthermore, and I think we are expecting by 2030. A lot of reports say 2,400. Our estimate says around 2,500. GCCs are about to set up. They are not just going to be 2,500 GCCs. They are going to contribute to over $120 billion of revenue to the country every year. And beyond that, they are going to generate employment of close to 5 million. Today, the current talent pool in GCC is around 1.6 million, and it's going to grow 3 times is what is expected in the next 5-6 years. So it's Decade of India, and welcome to all to discuss the future and discuss about the present challenges around it. To set a little more context, we all know GCCs have 4 waves. I'm not sure how many have done that part of that, but there are 4 waves which are considered in GCCs. The first wave is considered between the era of 1980 till 2010. This brought around 700 GCCs in the country and contributed to around $11.5 billion revenue to the country. This employed around 4 lakh employees. That's the first wave of GCC which we are talking about. There is a second wave which was between 2010 to 2015, which meant there are over 1,000 GCCs in the country. It contributed to almost $20 billion revenue to the country and created employment of around 7.5 million, not 700,000, 750,000 employees were installed in wave 2.0. 3.0 was even more exciting. We reached around 1,600 GCCs, and this wave is between 2015 to 2023. We reached around 1,600 GCC. The contribution was around $46 billion in revenue. The number of talent was around 1.7 million talent, which was installed. So amazing growth. And I think the wave 4 is going to be about a lot more transformation, a lot more contribution, and a lot more talent being needed. And with that, I think I would want to bring each of my speaker one at a time to talk about some of the challenges which they foresee in the coming times. Specifically, as we see a lot of transformation happening, a lot of talent being needed, and there's definitely going to be a lot of competition around it. So I would like to start with probably Arun to get started. I think he carries tremendous experience in part of various organizations. So love to hear his thoughts about the challenges ahead and the way he looks forward to solve them.
Thank you, Anuj, and thanks everyone for joining through LinkedIn as well as through this webinar. And I've been part of the GCCs for the last 6 to 7 years through my various companies. And what I've seen from the last 7 years to till now is all about the growth from what exactly Anuj has told about, specifically on the monetary perspective of how the GDP have grown in India, how the talents have been installed, from what it was to what it is today, and how many ever GCCs came over, start from 700 to 1,600 this year, and it may go another 2,000 to 2,100 by end of 2030. What we are looking for, as a challenge in coming years for GCC is there are more roles going to come, the more talents, that we are going to establish, different roles, different aspects of the roles, how we would probably see today versus what we are going to see in the next 6-7 years. A lot of senior level roles may come into India because specifically when it comes for capability centers or service centers, we would probably think about setting up overall leadership teams, in India, and then from India, the things will get operated to rest of the world. Also we need to work about how government is really looking at in doing a policy formulation, which will help GCCs to work upon, and that obviously at this moment is a little gray area and challenge. But how that can be, worked upon, and maybe in 2030 there is an easy way of formulating the policies to bring out GCCs in India can be a good way of doing it. And also upskilling, reskilling the employees that we probably look out hiring in India. As a GCC now, how we can reutilize the resource that we have had versus the skill sets that's changing, demographic skill sets in India is also a good talk of the town that we all discuss through the GCC programs. So these are some of the challenges I would probably think that we will look at it in the next 6 to 7 years.
Very well said. Gokul, over to you.
Yeah, sure. I think very well put out, Arun. Thank you so much. If I look at both from a macroeconomic and a microeconomic factors, right, there are a whole bunch of ideas, a whole bunch of things that keep on changing, especially like a country like India. When I look at the political, socioeconomic factors, etc., that have aided the growth that we have at this point in time, I think there's a phenomenal change, or there is a huge mind shift around the way that we're looking at things for ourselves as part of India and looking at a global strategy. And also, on the other hand, the numbers are looking very, very encouraging to the points that you're alluding to, Anuj. If I look at the next 5-year growth perspective, there is a significant uptick in terms of the kind of volumes, the kind of work that is coming into India, the kind of ideation that is happening at this point in time. We have seen close to about 300 to 400 GCCs at any points in time doing back-end activities and generating some of the other market research kind of capabilities, that there is a constant study that is going around, which typically says that there's not only the present, but also a pipeline that is consistently open for us. Given the landscape of opportunities, it comes with, of course, a lot of challenges. And these challenges are, if I have to talk about keeping talent acquisition as my locus control, I kind of really see that there is multifaceted kind of challenges that we kind of really have to really wade through. One of which, in the recent times that we have seen, there is a sudden upheaval around the freshers hiring that happens around in the GCC markets. While Arun touched upon the leadership talent available and the leadership fulcrum that is existing, where we can actually motivate and upskill the talent groups, there is a constant feed of the fresher talent pool that's always available. Now, moving into the fresher area, there is always a challenge that our compensation structures, talent landscape, socioeconomic factors, locational changes, all of these constraints have to be really kept in consideration while we're looking at the hubs for the GCCs that we consider here in India. India, when you look at it in the last 5 to 7 year time period, has grown into multi-pocketed kind of experiences. For example, Bangalore is the Silicon Hub of India. Pune has been a big GCC hub for us. We've seen Hyderabad picking up as one of the bigger hubs for us. Locations like Kolkata, Gurgaon, and other locations which have really come up as a big win, post-COVID and pre-COVID times when I kind of reconsider. When I look at those data points and look at the next 5 years time to really come in, there is a significant growth aspirated. But if there is a growth that is coming in, there's absolutely abundance of challenges that we also need to encounter. These challenges probably would mean that there is an abundance of talent available, so we should probably bring in our assessment, modulation mechanisms to really use or adapt the new technologies like generative AIs and other mechanisms to really find the right best fit talent. Look at how do we encouragingly grow this, because what we see is if the indexing is high around the freshers talent, there is high volatility, the stickiness goes lower for us, the compensation goes haywire. So we might have to really look at some of these constraints plus the locational challenges that could really become a big contributor for us GCC success that we're looking at for the next 5 years time period. Right. Adding to all of this, we also look at the movement and mobility of talent, because the aspirational growth for the mid-level and the senior level talent has always been that we have to really become a global leader, managing global workforce, managing locations around the globe, etc. So even that has to be really mitigated to a large extent to keep the interest levels up and running for senior leadership teams as well. Right. So it's a multifaceted challenge, both at entry level, mid, and the senior levels as well that we look at. So this is what I feel from a holistic perspective and inside-out approach. While you look at the market opportunity, we also have a bounty of challenges that we need to really wade through in the next 4 to 5 years to come in.
Very
Right.
interesting. Very, very good points, Gokul. Jay, I'm sure you would have your side of experience to share and then suggest us the way forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those wonderful points and the challenges that we are set to foresee in the coming years, Arun and Gokul. The two areas that I feel would be in focus is, how the macroeconomic scenario pans out over the next couple of years. For example, this year is very, very critical. Being an election year, both in India and the US, you've seen a bit of slowdown in hiring, but the docs say that towards the end of this year there will be uptick in hiring. That means that we will continue to see a lot of multinational corporations setting up their GCCs. If you look at the two waves that have happened so far that Arun spoke about, it was mostly centered around American multinationals trying to set up GCCs in India. You would see a lot more participation of corporations that are based out of, let's say, Europe or Japan, trying to set up their shop in India, right? The other thing that you would see is that, how do we cater to the Indian job market? So organizations will have to tailor their recruitment strategies, which are more specific to the needs of the Indian talent, right? That also means that you'll have to drive policies, rewards and benefits. You will have to be very, very specific to the context or the country that you're dealing with, right? The second point that I want to bring about is, so far GCCs have more so concerned about doing back-end operations, mostly shared services in the financial organization space. But over the last 2 years, we have seen that a lot of GCCs that are being set up are more contributing towards technological transformations, right? They are more focusing on innovation. So these GCCs will become the innovation hubs. With that, we'll have to embrace technology. We will have to derive policies that support usage of technologies like generative AI. I think companies will be forced to implement policies on how the talent uses some of these technologies. The third thing is around the government policies, right? We spoke about few key states like Maharashtra, Pune is a hub, Karnataka, you have Bangalore. Hyderabad is, of course, very close to, a lot of companies are opting for Hyderabad. But I think there are a lot of states that want a lot of business to inflow, right? So, for example, giving tax benefits to organizations that are planning to support GCCs, right? Those will also play a greater role in where the organizations or multinationals would want to serve their GCCs. And the last one would be localization of talent. A lot of talent has become very comfortable working out of their hometowns, tier 2, tier 3 locations. I wouldn't be surprised if, there will be GCCs in cities like Nagpur, Indore, Mysore, you never know. With the development that is happening, the number of airports coming up, the kind of infrastructure that is being developed on the roadside, I think no city is far away from a metropolitan city in India today. So I think India's growth will go hand in hand with how we'll see a growth in GCC. And with those, we'll have challenges around the things that I discussed. So maybe we'll have to brace up for these challenges, be prepared, and probably be very proactive in designing strategies to counter these challenges.
Very well summed up, Jaykishan. I've been seeing all these, and I think we being in industry for last 19 years, Join, when we've seen how GCCs have transformed. There was no word GCC, by the way, in 2010 or 20 before that, but I think GCC started coming more prevalent in the late 2015, 2018. That's the time. I think until then they were more known as captives. In the wave one, when we looked at it, most of the organizations who wanted to be in India was cost arbitrage. I think that's what they're primarily looking at. And in the current wave, when we talk to a lot of these new GCCs who are setting up, GCCs who are our customers, we see a lot of them talking about transformation, innovation, and yeah, you're right. Tier 2, tier 3 cities are really happening. That's a key factor. I mean, we see Ahmedabad, Coimbatore rising up as the biggest, other than the tier 1 cities. They are the most emerging hubs, to be very honest, as we have seen. But yeah, Indore, Nagpur, these are destinations which are rising in a big way. And I think we all know that the amount of talent pool requirement across all these GCCs will be significantly high, and which would mean a lot of competition for talent when you are looking at hiring talent. We're talking about almost 5 million talent to be installed, 3 times the talent, and it's going to come from somewhere. There are 2 big challenges which we see with a lot of our customers when we talk to them. I think it's about hiring fast with very, very solid quality. And the other thing is the skill gap, because there is definitely going to be a skill gap when you're trying to install a lot of talent pool. And I would love to hear each one of your thoughts around that space. How do you see the skill gap as well as hiring fast with hiring great quality talent? How do you see that happening in the coming years? We'll probably start with Gokul.
Sure. So I think that's a very, very pertinent point, Anuj, if you look at it, because, at any industry, standards, when I talk about, the maturity models will clearly depend on how fast, how equitably are we able to bridge the skill gaps in the process. When I talk about it, there is always a constant opportunity to really upskill the people, and also look at how do we kind of get to the right crux of the overall demand generation, future work, as well as a huge brand for an organization by itself. The faster that we bridge the skill gaps that we can look at, the faster that we get to an efficiency model, the faster that we have a proper retention strategy that can really help us evangelize a great talent mix in the organization as such. The other way to look at it is there are organizations in the recent times when we had seen a spur of huge startups coming into the organization or into the market as such. And there has been a tectonic shift in the way that the organizations have started working, be it irrespective of size, agnostic of distances, time of work that we do, etc. I think it was hugely recognizable that the talent is required and it's not the place or the area that you work from, basically. What it has also evangelized is that we've also gone into multifaceted talent pools. For example, working women, non-working women, people who've been coming back from a career break, all of that have been considered. There has been a faster, game-changing, effective practices to hit the road running that have been adopted to ensure that people can come back to a lot of practices. The gap has been really identified very clearly and has been really constricted or reduced to a large extent, which basically means that there is always an opportunity to really upskill. There is always an opportunity to leverage the talent gaps for a future need, and also look at how do we kind of address newer economic and innovative sourcing mechanisms that can really always have a consistent talent pipeline for us in the near future as well. Having said that, we also have an ecosystem wherein there is always a hire and train kind of models. Learnability has increased extensively. There is a high level of curiosity from people that are coming in. For example, when I talk about some of the recent GCCs that are kicked off, there is a huge curiosity that has come in to understand what have we got to offer in terms of work-life balance, capability, distribution, mechanisms to really adopt faster ways of making money and all of that together, right? So, I mean, all of this is kind of on the base of the talent that really offer for the organization and the kind of markets that are getting operated today. Like we just spoke about, Jay was addressing that the various pockets of information, various smaller towns that have become a bigger hub today is primarily a function of how fast, how equitably are we able to roll up the talent to the next levels. So talent generation, talent landscaping, and also looking at how do we kind of operate at the next level becomes the key point of success for all of us. So I clearly see in the next 4 to 5 years time to really come in. While we look at the entire enormous opportunity as a big win, we're also looking at the talent gap reducing over a period of time by utilizing all of the recent most technologies. Talk about AI. Even if I do not understand Excel, I can still work in an organization generating MIS for the company without even knowing Excel today. So that's the beauty of knowing technology, understanding the talent gaps, adapting to it, and ensuring that we kind of reduce the talent gap as fast as possible. And this is all yielding a great profitability for the organization that are coming in newly. Right.
That's it. Jay, would you want to add some points there?
Yes, I would like to add on to what Gokul was speaking. While he was speaking, I was thinking about, how do you leverage the young population that India has to offer? If you look at the kind of talent that is coming out at the entry levels is phenomenally huge, right? And with the new government talking about education policies, focusing on empowering the girl child, right? All of these have to be harnessed by the organization that are trying to set up GCCs in India. That also means that now multinational corporations will have to work very closely with academia to design programs that would specifically cater to the needs of the business today. For example, if you look at the most hot skills in the last 2 years, any report will talk about cybersecurity as one of the top 5 skills, right? Now, how many universities offers a course pertaining to cybersecurity, right? There are not many as far as my research goes. So maybe organizations will want to partner with universities, offer programs, collaborate on the curriculum, and then probably hire people from those programs, right? So there will be a need for specialists. The world is moving towards skill-based hiring. So your degrees won't matter as much as they did in the past. So you will be hired based on the skills you possess, right? and probably a lot of assessment will happen. So there is gone are the times where companies used to go to campuses and hire thousands of people, right? Because there are campuses, there are universities in some remote parts of the country from where you can get phenomenal talent. So there are organizations which are leveraging technology, keeping the interview process open to just everyone and not specific to a particular industry, right? For example, I know a couple of organizations that run an off-campus program completely online, open to everyone. There is no bar on tier 1 colleges, tier 2 colleges, tier 3 colleges. That means every person is on par. You're competing with a tier 3 guy is competing with tier 1 and vice versa, right? So that is where we will have to address the skill gap problem, right? And this will happen at a very, very macro scale. It will happen at a large scale. That also means that companies will have to invest in designing tools or probably partner with organizations that have these specific tools to uh, find the talent faster. A lot of times there is talent available, but you don't know how to reach that talent, right? The talent outreach is one area where there'll be a lot of investment that will be done from a talent acquisition standpoint. And the second one, as I spoke about, is working very closely with academic institutions in designing programs with the intent of probably imparting very, very specific skills that are needed for businesses today.
Yeah. I don't know
Thank
what
you, Jay. That's a great point, and we have done that in my previous companies. That some of the colleges that we went and we wanted to hire technology resources, and we've been pretty much advancing our technology at that point in time. Gone those days in 1990s and 2000s, early 2000s, we were hiring Java developers, .NET developers, huge amount of people from the campuses and industry, and it was available, and there was no advancement or upskilling is required at that point in time, probably. And now the world has changed, right? The AI has came in, the generative AI has come in. So it's required for the students and those who are into technology area. They need to keep on upskilling, reskilling those technologies that could probably help them to remain static and standard in the future, right? So some of the colleges that we worked upon with the futuristic technology thinking, in our mind, that not just Java, but with Java, can they work on Scala? And with Scala, they would probably work on some data engineering or a full stack perspective. And that's how we have given the programs to the campuses to help the students to coach and guide. And we went ahead and hired those. So that has started now in the colleges. And I was in one of the other conference, but I was also very impressed in hiring that some of these colleges are also giving an opportunity for candidates to build their own startups. They're training them. There is a 6 months course that they can build their own startups as well. So the students are getting ample opportunities to do what they probably want to do, what they probably want to become. It's just that the critical thinking capabilities, as well as how they can remain very clear on what the future is going to be from a technology and other businesses point of view, can get them up from a shifting perspective.
Very well said. That's very right. I think the entrepreneurship part in the institutes is amazing. I've been part of the E-Cell in IIT Bombay, where I got a chance to meet some of the startups coming out from IIT Bombay, and it is too exciting, too encouraging to see the kind of entrepreneurship skills or the kind of enthusiasm, kind of thought process all these young kids bring, and it's very, very amazing, and I think a lot of that will get advantage for even if their startups are not really successful, the skill they are developing are gonna be very, very useful for a lot of organizations, and I'm sure GCCs also would want to capitalize, specifically considering that they want to do innovation and transformation altogether in our country. And that brings me to another point which I wanted to bring up and talk about. I think we've been doing a lot of research internally in Zoin, trying to figure out how the market is going, and that's something on one of those aspects we were trying to figure out what is the kind of talent pool, lateral hiring, what is the talent pool, all the GCCs which are coming, what is the kind of talent pool they are targeting. So these are some of the numbers which we got, and I'll talk about it. So 30% of the lateral hires came from IT services companies. 20% of them came from startups as well as some of the technology product companies. Remaining 50% comes from other GCCs. And that's a very, very interesting point which we saw, and which meant a lot of these organizations are focusing on getting the same talent, and it's going to be very, very tough to grow, to expand, to build in India. And that's where employment brand is going to be very, very important for all the GCCs which are setting up, that how they can attract talent and hire talent from competitive GCCs or organizations, because the kind of experience of being part of GCC is altogether different than being part of a startup or any other organization, right? So so coming back to the core point, and point which I would like to bring in is employment brand. I think that's gonna be a very, very imperative thing for all the GCCs, and would love to hear your thoughts on how do GCCs build their employment brand. What are your thoughts around it? And I'll probably start with Jay this time.
Yeah, this is one area where at least we have started doing a lot of work. We are thankful that we are in the B2C space, but there might be GCCs that are setting up where the core business is a B2B business, right? So basically, you want to hire for an organization that the talent has not heard about, right? So there goes the emphasis of the brand putting itself out in the market, telling a lot more about what they do, what their vision is, what their values are, right? So probably if your brand is in the B2B space, then you will have to tailor your approach towards talent acquisition and employer branding very, very differently than if you are in the B2C space. Because in the B2C space, talent is able to relate to your brand and the logo much more than if you are in the B2B space, right? For example, we will have to train the team in branding in such a way that they act as storytellers. They're able to come up with compelling stories as to why they should join the particular organization, right? So developing a branding strategy, which is very, very centric to probably what the values of the organization are and the kind of impact that the roles that are being offered can create. These two are going to be my top bets on when it comes to branding strategy. Two, branding is not going to stop at the kind of employee-centric approach the organization has. Branding will also have to go hand in hand with the kind of challenging opportunities that an organization or a brand has on offer, right? With more and more people working remotely, the talent or employee base today is not interacting as much with the brand. For example, when you walk into the office, at the reception, the first thing that you see is the logo of the company. But when you're working remotely, might be a screensaver, or the only time you will enter your company name is at the email ID, right? So the connect with the brand is pretty limited if you work remotely, right? And you don't get to hear the name of the company a lot more when you're working remotely. So that means that you'll have to tailor your branding strategy, which is also linked to the ways of working, right? So both internal and external, probably these would be a two-sided focus that organizations will have to build on.
Okay. Well said. Well said. Arun, I'll pass it on to you. Your thoughts.
I could pick up because I'm on the same boat presently that we are looking to build our brand to majority of candidates to attract. To be very frank, specifically for GCC, this employer branding really requires a nuanced approach that considers both global best practices and the regional cultural specifics, right? So I would probably go with an employee value proposition being extremely strongly built, right? So like what's the development that we are trying to do, and what's the growth of our global capability centers that's coming to India, and how are we showcasing that to build a career path, the professional career path, and creating an opportunities for the incoming candidates is very, very important. We speak about compensation and salaries, right, which is very important for anybody to make a decision, right? So if a company X pays some amount, and being a GCC newly set up, and I'm paying, X plus 1, 2, maybe the candidates would be interested because of compensation, but that's not going to kind of really create a value proposition, right? So we need to speak about work-life balance. We need to build a strong culture or create a culture, and that needs to be, baked upon while we are creating a branding strategy with us. Diversity and inclusion is very important. Gone those days that in the leadership, senior leadership team, they're only male, sitting over and then taking a decision. We certainly, there are organizations who have percentages that we need to figure out in hiring women or, other genders, but that's very important to have a diversified approach and inclusive approach towards it. And then it largely comes to how we can leverage those through a social media and content marketing. So I'm on the same path of building Flutter in India at this point in time, and these are some of the initial days that we are building the EVP. So totally on it. So start from EVP, and then try to understand your culture and promote your culture better with the right benefits and other stuffs, and then become a brand ambassadors of the organization, providing the employee advocacy.
Right. Fair point. Gokul.
Sure. Brand by itself, right? I think as Jay and Arun have been highlighting, becomes a big recall for any part of talent that we kind of hire. I would probably emphasize a little more on a three-pronged approach, which is maybe talking about talent attract, retain, and grow the talent, basically, right? So this is a clear outcome indicator of how good your brand sits among the talent that we're trying to hire. Now, let's take a small scenario wherein, when you hire or attract some kind of talent, they consistently really work with us for a longer duration of time. The organization also stays invested in that particular talent to really upkeep their interest levels, grow them to a certain extent. What it kind of gives us an output is that they retain the talent for a longer duration of time as well. So that ecosystem of find, grow, and keep, has to be constantly being renewed. And that is the fulcrum or the basis for your branding strategy and the brand recalls that we're talking about. As Arun touched upon, from a culture perspective, the way that we kind of envisage a talent market to really understand from a GCC standpoint, right? The culture becomes very important, because this one is basically, when you're talking about a GCC environment, classically maybe more of a hybrid work environment, right? Environments. Now, when we talk about global opportunities to leadership teams, alluding to my initial points where I was touching upon some of the middle management and the leadership talent are looking for opportunities which are kind of taking them global, taking them for a longer distance for working in various countries and larger objectives, larger goals, etc. When the corona or the COVID times came and hit us, the entire narrative changed for all the landscape around that point in time, and all the jobs started becoming work from home. People started working from their comfort spaces. As Jay was touching upon, many a times people are not even aware of the background or the screens that they're looking at and using for their discussions and meetings. So it became a journey wherein people were agnostic of distance, time, and eventually still working for a great place in their head, if I look at it, right? So all of these, when I talk about, from a GCC HR standpoint, how do we reinforce a work culture that kind of keeps the employee tied into the brand? Right, that becomes very essential, especially when we're talking about a hybrid work model. When we're talking about, there is no classical role of the office setup in the career journey of the employees, right? So it becomes a big challenge. And when you talk about some of the outputs that we kind of look at while building a brand, essentially word of mouth communication, a comfort for working together, maybe a coffee chat or a coffee meeting, maybe talking about chalking out plans while walking together into the office lift lobbies. These are some of the things that gets taken off from remote work structures. The collaboration, the bonding, the celebrations won't really happen while you talk about working remotely as such. Though we understand this is the next normal, but I think the point is there has to be consistent reinforcements of the brand that needs to really come in. When I talk about some of the areas where how my team is doing, how my communication is sitting into the team, am I involved in the decision making for the employees? Are they able to look at the opportunities around? These are the objectives that will take them in a longer journey when I talk about a brand. Most of the global setups, most of the global organizations do offer this kind of culture wherein you can talk to global colleagues, you can understand what are the pain points, you can solve for problems globally, and that kind of keeps the employee motivated. Doesn't that really be a role description that keeps them motivated at all times? There could be a potential of collaboration, there could be a potential of varied problem solution that I can bring in as a talent pool, and then eventually look for an opportunity that can really expand my horizons as well, right? So I think employer branding becomes a pivotal point at this point in time, because many of times we don't even know which location is my headquarter, where is my office sitting, but I'm really working 8 hours, 12 hours a day for this organization, right? So that brand presence, effective top of the mind recall becomes very, very quintessential moving forward to ensure that we grow and retain the talent for a longer duration of time, right? And that's where I would really think all of my three activities of finding great talent or attracting great talent rather, growing them and retaining them becomes very, very important for me as part of my EVP or my employee value proposition that I want to bring to the table.
Well, very rightly said, I think. With employment brand being the objective, core objective, and with COVID and hybrid workforce, it always is a unique challenge across all HR teams or talent acquisition teams, acquiring talent, making sure they're aligned to the company goals, they're aligned to attached to the organization is mission critical nowadays. And I think Arun also touched upon one of the important points in employment brand, which was about diversity and inclusion. And that's something we've seen a lot of GCC are quite pushing it. And I think rightly so. I think it makes a lot of sense for organizations to have diversity, not just in terms of gender, but beyond gender as well. I mean, there is a lot of a lot of complexity around that, and you need to build a right workforce, right balance around it, so that the organization is able to collaborate, innovate, and be very, very creative across, right? And we were doing a little bit research. I think all of it comes from a lot of research which you've been doing these days. So the industry standard of gender diversity has been around 21%. So 21% is where industry stands, and well, I think GCCs have been doing extremely well around that space. They're around 26% is what our research says. There are certain research says that it's around 28%, but I think as far as the data which we have gathered based on the kind of GCCs which we covered, it's around 26% is where the gender diversity is. Specifically, I'm talking about the tech sector. I'm not necessarily considering a lot of support function around that space. And I think a lot of GCCs really are the driving force for diversity. But I think there are a lot of things which a lot of talent acquisition people, a lot of HR people can learn from GCCs. And since we have a lot of talent acquisition leader around the same space, I'd love to hear how you guys are working on solving challenges around diversity, and more so around while gender is something which is very easily relatable and viable to do, but I think diversity beyond that is something also equally critical. And probably I'll love to start from Arun to have a view on this.
Great, thank you, Anuj. And as GCCs, when they start building out, they should obviously continuously monitor progress, measure results, adapt their strategies based on the feedbacks that they get. But when they start the first employee, they need to kind of set up, what's their targets really from a diversity perspective and what diversity really means for them. And when we looked upon the diversity, we started obviously with the gender diversity to work upon. As I said, we set up a 40% target for our organization at the leadership level. And then, we went on hiring, crucial candidates for a role. But having said that, a long way to go. It's a workaround process. It's an ongoing process. For any GCCs, they need to set up an employee resource groups. These formation of ERGs that support employees from underrepresented groups and, provide provide a platform for their voice to be heard, doing a mentorship programs, providing rewards and recognition for inclusive, candidates that we hire, a lot of things that we are tend to do, and many GCCs have been started from scratch. So first and foremost, embedding the D&I strategy into the organization within the GCCs wherever it is, and the leaders must drive it. The leaders should be the champions of this initiative, who will drive the core value and integrate it to the overall strategy of the organization, which is very important. And also those we hire from a number 1 employee to a number 1,000, all of them needs to get trained specifically about D&I, specifically on unconscious bias or cultural sensitivities, and so on and so forth, can help to each of us to work around an inclusive work environment. So as I said, it's a challenge still to hire candidates with diverse and inclusive, but we are still, I think the GCCs are working on very strongly, smartly on overcoming this situation.
Jay, how are your thoughts, and what exactly would you suggest around the D&I initiatives?
No, see, the whole D&I thing has picked up big time, I think, in the last 7 to 8 years, and most organizations today have a D&I leader in a seat, right? And probably there has been a lot more emphasis on gender when it comes to D&I, but I think we're talking beyond gender now. We're talking about people who may not be neurotypical, basically looking at people who are neurodiverse, right? People with disabilities of different forms and shapes, right? So these are some of the things that have become key. And more we are getting requirements where there are certain specific roles that are brought up in the organization to be filled only through diverse talent, right? While diversity is easy, what is hard is inclusion, right? For example, there was a time when we had a mandate of hiring for someone very diverse in one of the stores that we have in Bangalore. And we ended up hiring someone with speaking as well as hearing difficulty. And the person was supposed to be sitting on the cash counter. Now imagine someone with hearing and speaking difficulty sitting on the cash counter. Customers are walking in, they want to make a payment. How do you interact, right? There are other people in the team who need to be interacting with this person. So what we did was to make the person more included in the organization, a very inclusive approach. We trained all the employees of our India team in sign language, right? For example, we don't expect the other individual to speak your language. It is us who will have to adapt to the ways, make that person comfortable, talk the way the person knows, right? So basically, focus is more around inclusion. And the second thing that I want to start is that diversity and inclusion starts from how you draft your job descriptions. Gone are those days. People are looking at job descriptions. Talent acquisition leaders want to ensure that every job ad that is going out in the market is gender neutral. So you will see less and less use of looking for an aggressive leader. Yeah, some of these terms don't go well with certain kind of talent, right? So job descriptions are being modified to be more gender neutral, to attract more diverse talent. Though we see a lot of women in the workforce, but if you look at the trends and data, the percentage of women in the workforce has not gone beyond, as you said, 28 to 30%. And as they grow up the ladder, the percentage keeps decreasing, right? You might find that these metrics are being met, but if you delve deeper, maybe if you double click on the diversity metrics, you'll see that most of these diversity hiring targets are being met at an entry level, right? For example, if an organization has 28% women in the workforce, maybe almost 50 to 60% of them might be at entry levels up to 0 to 2 or 3 years of experience, right? But I think there is more emphasis on inclusion. Until now, we were talking a lot about hiring diverse talent, but glad that the conversations have moved from how do you make this talent included in the organization, give them a safe space, design your workspace to make them welcome and feel included in the organization. Those have been some of the key things that some organizations have started doing. And I think we'll talk more about inclusion and equity in the future and probably stop talking about just hiring more women in the workforce.
Very well said. I think that's actually the right way to do it. I think being inclusive first and diversity always follows. And I think it's not just about gender diversity for sure. Gokul.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll probably touch upon a little more on what Arun and Jay have been highlighting, but more so to do with what are the organizations today building as a strategy or a framework to adapt to the DEI mechanisms, right? Diversity and inclusion mechanisms as such. I think some of the areas, while we talk about GCC as an opportunity, right? There's a huge, humongous opportunity that we have. Way that we're looking at a 28% or a 30% as current diversity, which is we talking about gender diversity today, is I think though it's an industry average, that's the data, but it's really suboptimal because we have not even explored the larger pool of talent that is available, given the mechanisms of work or working remotely or working from different locations at the convenience of our home, etc. So these are things that are going to add up to our capability to enhance the talent pool as such. Now, it's a mental model. We really think about diversity and inclusion as two different aspects, absolutely plus one to what Jay has been speaking about. But I think this has to be driven top down in the organization. And the leadership has to really commit as a mental model that we have to really go dwell deeper into the mechanisms that we adopt. Number one, I'll just structure this in two pieces. From a diversity standpoint, what we call as a diversity, or what do we kind of qualify or quantify as diversity as such, right? There are different cohorts that we kind of work on to define a diversity index or diversity mechanisms. One, primarily, which is a straightforward, which is gender diversity or a mix of pay structures, pay band, work cultures, etc., between two different segments of people, right? Or maybe two different or three different segments of people as such. When you talk about gender, it's more of adding up the women employees at various structures, various stages of life that we're talking about today. That has gone by. That is no more a bigger complexity to solve for today because every area we've become equitable at this point in time, and we take a lot of pride in being equitable rather than differentiating them. The second objective is from people with disabilities or talking about some of the disability areas. That is no more. Sorry, I had an echo. Sorry. So talking about disabilities, wherein we include people with a lot of disabilities and maybe a minor disability as well. So those are some of the jobs that have been cut out that we can think about, that we can include as part of our index. The third area that we kind of really have to index high on is a different cohort, which you have seen in multiple organizations across the globe, is the veteran or the military hiring that we kind of typically look at. That becomes a pivotal point of success for us from a diversity standpoint. Once we kind of build this, we should probably be able to look at how inclusive can we get in our work cultures, capability to really cope up with speed, ecosystem, mechanisms for them to work, infrastructure, all of them put together would probably build in our inclusivity over a period of time for us. So it solves for inclusivity if we clearly know what structures do we want to go behind for in a diversity kind of roadmap that we want to index. And again, having said that, given the sizability of the opportunity, which is going to be huge, I think this has to be driven top down for all the organizations to ensure that we have huge diversity, inclusiveness, and hence efficiently build a DEI structure or framework for the organization that we want to think about.
Okay. Thanks, Gokul. You know what? Very, very interesting inputs, very, very meaningful thoughts put across by all the panelists. And I had a lot of things to cover, but I think we are really low on time, and I think we would have always audience who have several questions, and we'll probably want to take a few of them and answer them. And if in case there are certain questions which we cannot take it right now, we'd love to answer them offline for sure. So taking guests from all the panelists right now, should we move to question and answers and make sure that our audience gets to interact with us?
Sure.
Sure.
Cool. So I'll try and cover a few of the questions, which I'm sure the panelists can also have a look at the question answer through our Zoom lens. But one of the questions, and it's probably kind of thing which I also wanted to cover, is role of AI in GCC and what changes it would bring about in your near future? I think that's a very, very hot topic, and with generative AI and chat GPT rising and influencing a lot of workforce. Any one of you would like to answer or take up this question?
Sure, let me take a stab at it. Maybe I think, and then maybe we'll leave it to the expert Arun, who can probably touch upon maybe a little more.
Sure.
I think generative AI and AI, when I look at the talent landscape or the talent fabric, has given us multitude of objectives, multitude of areas where we can improvise upon on a day-to-day basis. And there was a time when there was, a recruiter who was skilled in screening, evaluating, and presenting candidates to a hiring manager. I think today, I think AI is able to really do this entire ecosystem of work in a jiffy, right? And we're able to stack rank candidates together. We're able to stack rank talent pools together and club them together and leverage each talent pool in a much, much better, efficient way. I think AI today is completely changing the talent fabric in the industry. It's completely evolving as an ecosystem where everybody and anybody can really go into the talent pool and understand what exactly do they want and revisit the job descriptions, as we touched upon a little while ago. How effective can we go in terms of having a broader job description that can have a viable talent pool or a longer talent pool? The net is being casted wider and wider, and AI is really helping us to really ensure that we go deeper into the talent pools that we're looking at. Also, it is also generating a clear mechanism to really look at how effective can we go in terms of analytics, how effective can we become in terms of evaluating candidates and not really spending the entire time. There are ecosystems that have already come into structures where I talk to a candidate for about 2 minute or 3 minute time through a chat bot and able to understand whether the candidate will actually go into the offer process or accept the offer as well. So AI has become the living, breathing system for any of our mechanisms that we're adopting today. So it's definitely a huge change in the talent fabric that brings in.
Yeah, sure. Anyone who would like to add anything apart from this?
I'll be very quick, 30 seconds, because we have many questions to answer. So presently, many organizations, specifically GCCs that I'm talking about, globally between US and UK, when they wanted to establish their, center in India, they probably want to see how and data science, artificial intelligence can make, a path. And what's the beauty of landscape that we have in India across the locations and all stuff is what at first and foremost getting discussed. So I think it is only going to boom and go much larger from the supply demand point of view, where we need to kind of put a robust supply over it. And that's the reason this upskilling, reskilling conversations we are having. The colleges are training those candidates, training those students from the basics of data science, probably for the futuristic roles and all. So GCCs really want to see a role for specifically AI and data science for futuristic way of building in India.
Fair, fair. Jay, any other inputs? We have a lot of AI-based questions, as I
Could see
can. So one of them also asked, would AI take away recruiters' jobs? So
We hope not.
It wouldn't. So just
It
to
wouldn't.
answer that, it wouldn't. It will only create more opportunities for you. Being a fresher, it is two things, as I said. If you probably recollect, most important is how is your critical thinking? How do you prepare for the future? You can't just remain saying that, oh, I've read Java now, I've been expert in Java, and I remain in Java for the next 4 years. You can't. Gone those days, right? So you probably need to kind of upskill and reskill almost every 1 year for the new technologies that is going to come in the future for us. Generative AI can be a talk of the town today. Maybe next 2 years something else will come. Prompt engineers are the roles that we are hiring in India at this point in time, right? Who knows, 2 years before prompt engineer can be a role for us as a designation. So I think keeping yourself pretty much advanced, learning, upskilling, reskilling for those roles is not going to replace anybody at all from a fresher point of view.
very true, very true. Jay, I think you also wanted to add a few points.
No, I completely agree with Arun that, anytime something as disruptive as AI has happened in the past, we have seen that it has brought with it a lot of opportunities. right? With this AI as well, I anticipate that AI will only augment a recruiter. Like if sourcing is your primary skill, or if you're good at sourcing, maybe sourcing with the use of AI will become a skill, right? So it will become a supplementary skill. So just like how when Excel came in, people thought accountants' jobs will go away and stuff, but accountants caught up with technology. They learned Excel. So similar would be the trend I foresee, that talent would probably brace technology. They will learn how to use AI, and they'll leverage in their day-to-day work, and probably it will help them become even more productive than they are. So the work, a day in the life of a recruiter might change drastically, but I don't think it will take away job of a recruiter, because at the end of the day, what a natural and intelligent brain can do, which still I think some days, some years to go to for any AI system to replace us completely. But yeah, we'll have to probably leverage AI. You can't ignore it if you don't want to be obsolete anytime soon. So I would just say that, leverage these systems, tools in whatever shape and form, understand what their capabilities are, and try to probably play with it to start with, and then probably see what are its uses and how you can incorporate them.
Well said. Very well said. I mean, I'll try and put my little perspective. I think every once in a decade or two, there is something which comes which makes ground zero for everyone. And one was internet, right? When internet came in, we had retails, we had large retails, and suddenly we could see a flurry of e-commerce companies like Amazon coming up and putting things from ground zero and creating a new business line altogether and creating a plethora of opportunities around that space. Same thing happened around smartphones. Today, that's what is going to again happen around generative AI. It's going to create a plethora of new opportunities. For organizations who want to succeed, or for people who want to succeed, it's about adoption. It's a new thing. It's going to be the most important thing which has happened in this current decade. It's about adoption. How well we are able to adopt will create opportunities for us, create success for us. And be it a business, be it an individual, I think adopting and being able to utilize and validating that will be most important. Imagine if some of the retail companies did not adopt to internet, what would have happened to them? Or some of the people who couldn't adapt to smartphones, what will happen to them? They'll go obsolete. And the same thing is with all people as job seekers or individuals. I think it's about adoption. Everything will create a new set of opportunities. And there is again another rule which works very well in Bangalore. When you clear one bottleneck, you come across a newer bottleneck. So I think AI is going to solve one of the bottlenecks of a lot of work, but I'm sure we'll come across newer bottlenecks, which will again create a lot of opportunities for everyone. I'm sorry, I couldn't hold myself talking a lot about AI. I keep talking a lot about it to the team as well as a lot of entrepreneurs where I work with. So always excited about it. When another very interesting question which is there, and I this is one by someone called Kiran Teja. It talks about how do organizations setting up in GCC in India ensure autonomy in decision making to cater to India specific dynamic talent conditions. It's a very critical question. We come across a lot of challenges when we start working with newer GCCs, and we realize that there are a lot of autonomous issues which causes them to get derailed out of the path, the plans they have. And I'm sure experienced individuals like you would have experienced it yourself. So would love to hear insights around that. Jay or Arun or Gokul, would you like to take this?
No, I've had my bit share of problems pertaining to this question, and I believe an organization or the leadership has to be open to experimenting, right? Uh, every country is different, and they have to be open to accept an idea that it is going to be different wherever they want to set up a center. So probably being open to different ways of working, being very open to understanding and learning more about the market conditions that one is dealing with is the key, right? And you need to have a spokesperson on the ground who would help you understand what is happening on the ground, right? That is where we see that a lot of senior positions are coming to GCCs. because organizations have started believing that you need someone on the ground to be able to take control, understand that particular region better, understand the challenges better, to come up with a solution. So essentially, what I say is, rather than being a good problem solver, I think someone who can define a problem well, that solves almost 50% of what you're trying to achieve, right? So probably understanding problems and probably accepting that there's a need to act differently is going to be the key.
Well said. Well said. Arun or Gokul, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think when you talk about autonomy, I think it's a very broad brushed word if I look at it today. Because India has always have had a dynamic, very, very dynamic, ultra dynamic talent conditions. What I mean by saying that is, with the advent of startups, with the advent of the unicorns coming in, the advent of, there was one point in time when there were reports from ETHR and other, other magazines that you can think through, where, where it was every eight out of every eight startups, there were three startups which were becoming unicorns, and eventually the three number became to a six rather, right? So 6 out of 8 startups are becoming unicorns. Essentially, this is coming out of the region or coming out of the segment that we have a strong conditioned talent pool. We spoke about it, touched upon it, because these are getting stemmed right at the beginning, right at the campuses where people are becoming experimentative, people are becoming entrepreneurial in nature, all of that's coming in. I think to me, autonomy today is a broad structure wherein we talk about, there is no more cost arbitrage available where the other organizations or other locations are looking at India to be a cost effective location. It's become a more of a what arbitrage that I get from a talent pool standpoint, what kind of skills that I can intake in the organization, etc. So I think the level of autonomy in decision making has become extensive, very, very important, and very, very pivotal to the point that we've seen the sudden surge and growth of GCCs in India today, and then also looking at the way it is structured for the next 5 years. That by itself makes a statement that there is a strong incremental value proposition that's coming up from a decision making standpoint, right? I've not seen any of the organizations who come into India to test waters here from a GCC standpoint, and then go back and say that no, we don't want to see it in India. They always start investing in India straight away, right? That itself says that the decision making becomes a little more imperative, and the autonomy is increasing by the day when I look at it, right? And that's what I really think that it's become a big win today for organizations and companies and countries like India as such.
Sorry, Anuj, we are well on time now, 5:15 already.
So probably we'll leave this as the last question. If you want to add this, or I'll probably add one more question for the audience, and remaining we can probably take offline if that works for all the panelists.
I think we can go to the next question.
Okay, so I have one interesting question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to take the questions which get very, very excited about. So what are the alternate, and this probably is a little short question. What are alternative methods do you use to assess candidates, potential candidates, in terms of their capabilities and culture fit? I mean, interviewing is one of them, but I think interviewing when you're setting up a GCC is a very, very big challenge because you don't have a lot of panels who are based out of India, and there is a lot of time gap and a lot of speed related issues. So are they, would love to hear your perspective or experiences around that.
You want to probably go? Sorry, I want to drop off. Anuj, don't mind. I have a meeting. If you don't mind, we can connect later. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Arun.
Thank you. Bye.
Gokul or Jay, would you like to take this, or we'll probably end this?
I lost my train of thought. Can you repeat the question, Anuj?
So what are the alternative methods have you used to assess potential talent, potential candidates for their capabilities and cultural fit?
I would rather say that, sorry, Jay, I would probably keep it real crisp given the interest of time. We have involved ourselves in building a repository of talent pool, building a mechanism wherein we can stack rank talent pool and use it at different points in time, right? So some of the mechanism that I can talk about is of course, revolving around AI. Some of the AI-based tools that we kind of look at where the candidate stack ranking happens based on number of years of experience, the skill sets required, the multitude of skill set the candidate brings in, etc., and quantifying of the common skill sets, common and core versus what can the candidate bring in as more as such. And also the candidates have been stack ranked based on availabilities as well. Like the candidate is available next 3 months time, next 6 months time, next 9 months time, basically. So I have my indexing that is happening constantly from a skill upgrade, from a timing of the hiring perspective. So I can go back to my own recruiting teams or my hiring teams and let them know that I can get you a talent pool in the year at Q3 or Q4 or maybe Q2 of next year, basically, right? So we become smarter in not just hiring as a just in time at this point in time, but also solving for a future need that's coming up. So some of the mechanisms that we adopted, purely AI based. And if I look at any of the common, sourcing engines, when I talk about sourcing engines, they are the tools that we use, like your job portals or the employee referral campaigns, etc. They come with the inbuilt sourcing or inbuilt, screening mechanisms that can help us evaluate candidates, where the candidates can self-select on the jobs and apply for them, right? So the classical role for a recruiter brings down a lot of efforts using any of these tools of AI or the inbuilt mechanisms for sourcing, screening, and evaluation mechanisms.
Good. Jay, your last points.
I would like to delve upon more on the cultural fit bit because Gokul has covered the other part. So when it comes to cultural fit, right, see, how do you, pass on this essence of culture through a conversation, right? That is the most difficult thing that a recruiter has to do, right? And there are bits of culture which might work for an individual, A, and the same culture bit might not work with some other individual, and both might be top talent that you might want to attract. So the whole concept of how you evaluate itself gets questioned, saying that what is your interviewing style, right? When you think about interviews, it looks like there'll be a panel of 3 people who will be bombarding you with questions, and you're supposed to answer questions. Now we are more looking at conversations, right? In a casual setup, we try to ensure that we don't have very formal interview when it comes to our evaluation. We probably invite a person over a coffee or a lunch, try to have a conversation, because that is when you are your true self, right?
True.
And when we talk about our organization, we just don't say what we have to offer. We also say the downsides of working with an organization like Levi Strauss and Company. So that helps build the connect. That helps us to understand the individual better, and that also gives an opportunity for the individual to see whether this is the place that I want to work for, right? So I think the transparency, the window is no longer opaque. It is so transparent that it is very important for an organization to also talk about things that are not so good in the company and what you're doing about it, right? I think that helps a lot in ensuring that you have a cultural fit, because as much as you are evaluating a candidate is also evaluating the brand. And that is where it becomes very important to be as transparent as possible in not just talking about the good things about the employer brand, but also things that need some areas maybe which are not so good and what you're doing about it.
Okay. Cool. So thank you so much, Gokul and Jay, and obviously Arun. I think we're done. We've finished with the time. There are a lot of questions which are yet not answered, and we'll try to take it offline. And if required, we'll take your expertise to have them answered. Over to you, Prithvi. Please take this forward and to finalize and close the session.
Thank you so much, Anuj, and thank you to our distinguished speaker as well for sharing your valuable insights today. I think there were a lot of insights which we shared, and all the attendees have gained a lot of information. So before we wrap up, I'd like to remind you guys to nominate your organization for the GCC Workplace Awards. Your contribution deserve recognition, and we are here to celebrate and honor them. Once again, thank you all for joining today's webinar. This is Prithvi signing off. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Gokul. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.